That report from Ken O'Shea. And our three potential house buyers, Kate Bennell, Jason Ryan and Patrick Flynn, have joined us here in studio, and they're going to listen to the upcoming debate. At the end, I'll ask them if they're more or less confident about house prices. Right, David McWilliams, you ended your presentation earlier by saying the risk of falling house prices is rising by the year. But you have been saying that for some time. I know other people are saying it now, but it hasn't happened.
Well, I'm now in very good company. I was out in my Sweeney Todd 3 or 4 years ago. Now, the point is this, Miriam, was part of an overall forecast of the economy, which said in around 2000, let's say 1999, 2000, hold on a second, the economy can't continue to grow by 10%. Growth rates will fall, unemployment might rise, taxation will fall, etc. Part of that jigsaw was the housing market. Now, the only part of that negative forecast that hasn't actually materialised and manifested itself is this property price issue. And if you look at the debate we're having now, if everything was hunky-dory, we wouldn't be having it. So the point is, why now? Why now? I am in good company with respect to the central bank and the European Central Bank and all that sort of stuff. The point is, interest rates, as Austin said, will rise, number one. Income has fallen, but most importantly, there's no value. Do you think a two-bedroom, 2 up, 2 down in Stony Batter is worth 300 grand? I don't. And if you look at the market, all the people on the tapes earlier on, it's about value. It's about value. There is no value in the Irish property market. Most interestingly, rents are falling. And they've been falling since about August 2001.
Okay. Let me bring in Austin Hughes there. Isn't part of the problem, Austin Hughes, that bankers like you do have a vested interest in saying the market is buoyant, that prices are going to stay up, go higher? But for instance, as David McWilliams said, the central bank have come out recently with warnings.
Well, I'm here as an economist rather than a spokesman for IIB Bank, but I think you have to remember that when people take out loans to buy houses, those loans remain on the books of these banks for a very long period of time, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And if they go bad over that time, the bank also suffers a significant hit. So it's certainly not in the bank's interest to really talk up a bubble in terms of the economy. It's also the case in terms of talking up that most of the voices we've heard over the last year have been very negative, but still house prices rise. I think that reflects the fact that people are doing their own sums and looking at a rise in employment. Income is still growing and interest rates are very low. So that's keeping things going.
Like the central bank comes out with warnings, are you saying they don't mean what they're saying?
Well, if you actually look at chapter and verse of the central bank warning, what they're saying is there is a possibility that house prices could be overvalued. And in that event, there is a risk. Now, if you realise what the central bank's job within the economy is, it's guardian of the banking system. So it has to warn in that regard.
Let's cut to the chase here. The economy has been fuelled by a credit boom, unprecedented credit boom. Okay? Any basic intercert economics tells you if you throw loads of money into an economy, there will be an asset price bubble. That's the basic. That is what has happened. All the banks, Miriam, are in the business of gaining market share. So what they're doing is they're pumping that volume. If you talk to any bank official tonight, what they'll say is every November or December, I sit down with my boss and he says, your target next year is 15% volume growth in lending.
But people want these loans, David McWilliams, because they need to buy the houses.
My point is, you asked me what's driving it. It is not supply and demand. In actual fact, if you look at the demand equation, demand, people say, most experts say, is about 45,000 new houses. We are building 62,000 new houses. We have already achieved that. If it was about demand, prices would have fallen already.
Back to him. That point, well, maybe 20,000 houses too many?
I don't think so. Well, first of all, in terms of perceptions of a credit-driven boom, Irish credit growth relative to GDP growth has been slower than in most other European countries over the last 5 or 6 years. And we're now at a rate of borrowing in relation to national income that's below the European average. So it's not out of kilter with what's happening elsewhere. In terms of demand and supply, it's definitely the case that supply is increasing quite dramatically. And that's a very healthy phenomenon. It's also healthy that prices are continuing to rise in that environment. Supply was way too low for too long.
Okay, let me bring David McWilliams in, because I suppose people watching, all they want to know is, should I buy my house, should I not buy my house, right? Therefore, when you spoke earlier about the house in Stony Batter, right, I mean, though there are good, solid reasons to believe that these houses are worth the prices, because in the past, we've had extraordinary economic success, we've had a massive population growth, there was an historical shortfall, you know, in housing compared to the rest of Europe. So there are sound reasons for these prices to be this high.
In the past, right, what we have is that there is There's a thing in the Irish Times which is called the Take 5 at 200 grand, referring to Stony Batter or whatever. And it tells you how much an Irish house is vis-a-vis other European EMU members. Now, quite frankly, a one-bedroom flat in the centre of town of Dublin at 400 grand compared to a 5-bedroom house just on the outskirts of Paris, I rest my case. There is no value here. Prices have gone through the roof, and it is a scam because the link between the land price and banking profits is inextricable.
Okay, it's a scam, you're all involved, and there's no value.
Well, here again, the perception is different from the reality. The Take 5 today showed a house in South Dublin in the city, compared it to somewhere South Africa, it compared it to the Costa del Sol and rural France. So it wasn't a fair comparison, and that's the critical element. The economy is still generating jobs here. Income is still growing. People still have the wherewithal. The key issue our new buyers have to ask tonight is, do they think they will be in a situation themselves to fund a mortgage? And in terms of the general economy, jobs will remain there. You still will have jobs in the economy, much healthier than in the past. And in those circumstances,
the point on the mortgage is very, very simple. We are now in a period of unprecedentedly low interest rates. So the entire equation flatters to deceive. It is telling people that today your mortgage will be X amount per month. We know that a mortgage is not a 3-year loan, a 6-year loan, a 10-year. It is a 30-year loan. History suggests to us that interest rates will rise. Now, for example, most Irish people are borrowing, first-time buyers like yourselves, borrowing at possibly, let's say, 4%. If interest rates rose by 2%, Austin, that is a 50% increase in the cost of servicing the mortgage. And that is something that you've admitted and most people admit will happen.
Back there, David. That's a legitimate
interest
concern,
rates,
isn't it, for new buyers like these?
Interest rates are going to rise. I think there's still an outside chance that they'll come down the short term, but the bigger picture is that over the next couple of years they will rise. But the fact that we're in EMU, the fact that most of the European economies aren't seeing anything like the growth we've had in Ireland over the last while, or won't in the future, means that interest rates won't rise aggressively. They will rise perhaps by 2%, and that is being stress tested in lending practices at the moment.
I'm glad that Austin mentioned EMU and other countries, because other countries' demography is profoundly different to ours. In the Germanys and the France of this world, they're an old population. They are a saving population. They've made their shekels, if you will. In Ireland, we have a demographic divide, and this is the crux of the issue for politics, which is why Bertie last Saturday said we're going to have to work these things out, because basically Ireland has had an unprecedented transfer of wealth from the young to the old via the mechanism of the housing market. So, for example, it's people in their 30s who actually have to cough up and people in their 60s who've made all the money. And if you look at history, you'd have to fight a war to have such a transfer.
Let me ask you a quick question, Dave McWilliams. If you were advising somebody tonight like these three, would you advise them to buy a house now?
Rents are falling. You should continue to rent.
Same question to you, Austin Hughes.
Don't buy in the expectation that you're going to make a quick turn. But you're going to see gains over the next couple of years, unless the economy absolutely collapses, and that's most unlikely to be the case.
OK, Austin Hughes, Dave McWilliams, thank you both very much. I'm going over to our three potential house buyers to ask them what they think. Obviously, the big concern for them is that if they buy, that the house prices won't plummet. OK, Kate Fennell, let me ask you first. After hearing that debate, what do you think? Are you feeling more confident or less confident about house prices?
Well, I suppose I feel the same as I did, in a way, which is that I agree with David McWilliams, I suppose, more so on many more points than our other economists there, especially when he mentions the fact that you don't get value for what you're actually buying. You know, that, for example, my preferred choice would be Connemara eventually, because that's really what I can afford. And you know, 250,000 for a leaky bungalow. You know,
it's a lot of money. Which
were derided, you know, when they were.
Would you still buy? Do you think, Kate, at the moment?
I will buy, because I actually don't agree with him that the prices are going to fall. You know, if there is a bubble burst, I just think that they're not going to increase, as our other economist says, you know, by a huge amount. But I wish they were here 10 years ago telling us that 10 years from now, houses are going to cost 225% more than they are today.
None of us were here then, but anyway. Patrick, What about you? Less confident, more confident about house prices?
I'm still very much the way I thought before, that we do realise we're in a false economy at the moment. We do realise that interest rates are going to rise, and that's one of the points I made earlier was, you know, the monthly affordability. That is always something that we've been realistic about. It's been something that, you know, we give ourselves that bit of space.
Even with interest rate increases?
Even with interest rate increases, and that's profiled the kind of costs and the kind of area that we can look at.
Okay, Jason?
I again agree with David a lot, but I'm still going to go with Austin because
it's like blind date.
Exactly.
But you will still go ahead.
I'm still going to go ahead. It's an investment. I don't do a lot in the stock exchange. My house is going to be an investment for me as well.
Okay. Well, I hope it all goes well for the three of you, and thank you both very much. Mark.
Thanks, Miriam.